You won't believe what Blake Lively is trying to hide. Ryan Reynolds' text could expose secrets the world has never seen before. Is this the moment that finally unravels the Hollywood drama? Stay with us, because when these messages drop, the story changes forever. And nothing will ever be the same. With drama surrounding Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni just keeps escalating, and in this latest development, the stakes have never been higher as court documents reveal that Blake is going to extreme lengths to protect her private messages, particularly those involving Ryan Reynolds. And the intensity of the legal maneuvering is shocking as she files motions to seal texts, claiming Ryan is an innocent third party. But as legal experts like Ron Zambrano break down the truth, the reality is far more complicated than it appears on the surface, and what we are seeing is not just a simple attempt to protect personal privacy, but a strategic move to control the narrative and maintain Hollywood optics while the underlying case against Baldoni continues to unfold. And the court is now faced with the challenge of balancing marital privilege with the public's right to transparency, and every word typed by Blake or Ryan or their representatives could potentially sway the perception of the case. And we have to understand the concept of a non-party witness in litigation. And Ryan Reynolds may not be a named defendant or plaintiff, but his involvement in the production of the film, the objections he raised regarding the set environment, and the all-hands meetings he attended with Blake Lively make him a critical witness, whose first-hand knowledge is essential to the case. And the law recognizes this through the concept of precipient witnesses, individuals with direct knowledge, whose testimony is relevant to establishing facts and emotional impact. And here Ryan's potential testimony regarding emotional distress is central, because any conversations he had with Blake about incidents on set could directly demonstrate the effect those events had on her mental state. And the court will consider whether these communications should remain privileged, and whether Blake's claim of marital privilege can hold when she is actively using these messages to support her own legal claims. And it becomes a precarious balancing act, because if she asserts privilege selectively, it may appear that she is trying to hide information that could be damaging to her position, and the law generally prevents such selective disclosure, as it undermines fairness in litigation. And this is precisely what legal experts are warning about, as the attempt to shield Ryan's messages while simultaneously leveraging them in court sets up a potential conflict that could result in the judge denying the motion to seal and making the messages public, which would be a catastrophic blow to Blake Lively's carefully crafted image. And the drama only intensifies when you consider that third-party communications, including agents at WME, who were allegedly involved in advocating for Blake, are also being scrutinized. And the argument that their communications should be sealed because Ryan is a non-party is flawed, because non-parties with relevant information are subject to discovery, and their involvement in the matter cannot be ignored, especially when those communications are cited in support of motions and summary judgment briefs, which the public has yet to see in unredacted form. And the suspense builds as every redaction raises questions about what is truly contained in these documents and why there is such a desperate effort to keep them hidden from public view. And the implications are enormous, because once these texts are unsealed, they could reveal details about the production disputes, the interactions with Baldoni, the influence of agencies, and the extent of Blake Lively's maneuvering behind the scenes to control outcomes and protect her reputation. And we cannot overlook the fact that legal precedent strongly favors transparency, and the threshold for sealing court documents is extremely high, meaning Blake and her legal team must present compelling reasons to justify keeping these communications hidden, and failure to do so will almost certainly result in public disclosure. And in this tense standoff, every word counts, and every motion filed or denied is a chess move in a game that Hollywood insiders and legal observers are watching with bated breath. And as Ron Zambrano notes, once a motion to seal is denied, the court clerk typically unseals the documents without requiring the parties to take further action, meaning the window for controlling the narrative closes rapidly. And this is where the drama escalates, because Blake's team must weigh the risk of public exposure against the strategic benefit of filing motions to seal. And while the public is clamoring for insight into these celebrity legal battles, the legal reality is that selective sealing or manipulation of privileged communications is not supported by the law. And this tension between legal procedure and personal image management is what makes this saga so enthralling. And the anticipation is palpable, because every update could reveal information that reshapes public perception and potentially alters the trajectory of the lawsuit. And we are left on the edge of our seats, imagining the moment when these messages are finally made public, because they are likely to contain revelations about Blake's strategy, her interactions with Ryan Reynolds, and the broader Hollywood network that surrounds her, and this is where suspense meets legal intrigue because the court's decision will have far-reaching consequences not only for Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, but for every celebrity seeking to manage personal communications in litigation. And the underlying question is whether the pursuit of privacy can withstand the rigorous standards of public record and judicial oversight. And as we analyze these developments, the tension continues to mount because the unsealing of texts will not only confirm the involvement of Ryan Reynolds as a critical witness but also provide insight into the complex dynamics that underpin Hollywood disputes. And the implications for emotional distress claims are significant, because the messages could reveal contemporaneous evidence of what Blake experienced and shared with her spouse, which is legally relevant, and the fact that this is being contested so fiercely indicates that there is potentially sensitive information that both parties are eager to control. And the drama is heightened because once these communications are public, there is no turning back, and we are witnessing a high-stakes battle where legal precedent, transparency, and celebrity image collide, creating a narrative filled with suspense and anticipation for what is about to be revealed in the coming weeks. And the audience is left waiting for the moment the court rules on the motion to seal, because the entire trajectory of this saga hinges on whether the texts are kept hidden or become a matter of public record. And this is why legal experts like Ron Zambrano emphasize the importance of understanding the nuances of marital privilege and the treatment of non-party witnesses, because these factors will determine the outcome and shape the perception of Blake Lively's legal strategy and Hollywood's response to it. And every filing motion and argument presented in court now carries an air of suspense and foreboding, because it could expose information that the parties would prefer to remain private, and the stakes have never been higher as we move closer to the moment of truth, where the court's decision will either vindicate Blake Lively's attempt to shield communications or force full disclosure. And with each day that passes, the tension continues to escalate, because the narrative is unfolding in real time and the public is watching every maneuver in anticipation of explosive revelations that could change the course of the lawsuit and redefine the way celebrity legal battles are perceived in the court of law and public opinion alike. And the suspense is further heightened by the fact that the motions reference WME agency involvement and communications between Ryan Reynolds and third parties that may provide context or insight into Blake's influence and legal maneuvering. And the complexity of these interactions, combined with the potential for high-profile exposure, ensures that when the texts are finally unsealed, the drama will reach a crescendo unmatched by any prior Hollywood lawsuit in recent memory. And the implications extend beyond just the parties involved, because the unsealed messages could set precedent for how communications are handled in future celebrity cases involving marital privileged non-party witnesses and agency involvement, creating a ripple effect that will be analyzed and debated across legal and entertainment communities for months to come. And the suspense is almost unbearable because the moment of disclosure is approaching, and every redaction that remains sparks speculation about the content and why it has been withheld. And the audience is left with a heightened sense of anticipation as the legal battle reaches a critical turning point, where the judge's decision will determine the level of transparency and the scope of information available to the public. And the tension is compounded by the fact that Blake Lively's legal team is attempting to protect personal communications while simultaneously using them in court, which creates a conflict that legal observers have been watching closely. And the potential fallout from public disclosure is enormous, because it could affect reputations, relationships, and the broader perception of Hollywood power dynamics. And the suspense is heightened because once the judge rules, the court clerk will act to unseal documents, and there will be no ability to stop the release. And the drama is inevitable and unavoidable, and the narrative is charged with tension because the public will finally gain access to messages that have been fiercely protected, and every party involved is aware that the outcome will have lasting consequences. And the anticipation continues to build because this is a rare glimpse into the inner workings of celebrity legal strategy and the intersection of privacy, privilege, and public record. And the suspense is almost cinematic in its intensity because the potential revelations could expose behind-the-scenes maneuvering, emotional distress, discussions, and strategic communications that have never been seen before. And the moment is approaching when the truth of Blake Lively's and Ryan Reynolds' communications will come to light, and the suspense is relentless as the legal system weighs transparency against privilege, and the audience is left on tenterhooks, awaiting the unsealing that could redefine this saga forever. as the court battle between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni continues to escalate the tension surrounding the potential release of text messages and communications involving Ryan Reynolds has reached a fever pitch, and the legal maneuvering is nothing short of cinematic, with every filing motion and redaction creating layers of suspense that the public cannot help but follow. And the significance of these communications cannot be overstated, because they potentially hold the key to understanding not only Blake Lively's claims of emotional distress, but also the sequence of events that led to the lawsuit and the context of her objections during production. And the court has to carefully consider whether these messages are shielded under marital privilege or whether they fall under relevant discovery. And once again, we are confronted with the precarious balance between privacy and transparency. Because while marital privilege exists to protect private communications between spouses, it is not absolute, and selectively waiving privilege in order to support a legal claim opens the door to scrutiny and the potential for public disclosure. And as Ron Zambrano explains, a non-party witness like Ryan Reynolds may not be formally named in the lawsuit, but his intimate knowledge of events the production disputes, the premier objections, and his participation in meetings and communications with Blake makes him central to the case. And the law recognizes that such first-hand knowledge is essential to establishing facts and proving claims. And the emotional distress aspect cannot be understated, because any conversation Ryan had with Blake regarding incidents that allegedly caused her harm is directly relevant to evaluating the validity of her claims, and the court will need to weigh the competing interests of protecting spousal communications while ensuring a fair and transparent legal process. And the suspense is heightened by the fact that Blake Lively's legal team is aggressively seeking to seal these communications, claiming Ryan is an innocent third party. But the arguments put forward by Justin Baldoni's legal team emphasize that Ryan's involvement is far from incidental, and that any attempt to keep these communications hidden from public view must meet a very high legal threshold, which the motions currently fail to satisfy. And the drama intensifies when you consider the involvement of third parties, including WME, whose communications with Ryan and Blake are cited in support of various legal positions and motions for summary judgment. And while Blake's legal team argues for secrecy, these communications are arguably critical to understanding the extent of influence and advocacy that may have shaped the course of the dispute. And the suspense is compounded because the motions are heavily redacted, leaving observers to speculate about what information is being protected and why. An every day that passes without a ruling adds to the anticipation, because legal observers know that once the judge issues a decision on the motion to seal, the entire landscape could change in an instant. And the moment of unsealing could potentially reveal messages that have never been seen before, messages that might demonstrate the true interactions between Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, the communications with agencies, the impact on Justin Baldoni, and the behind-the-scenes maneuvering that has characterized this legal saga. And the public is eagerly awaiting this revelation, because it represents not only the disclosure of private communications, but also a rare opportunity to observe the intersection of celebrity influence, legal procedure, and strategic litigation in real time. And the suspense is further intensified by the fact that every message could carry significant implications for emotional distress claims, because contemporaneous communications often provide the most compelling evidence of an individual's state of mind and the effect that events had on them. And the court will need to assess whether these communications were appropriately withheld under marital privilege, or whether they are discoverable as part of relevant testimony. And while Blake Lively's team argues that public exposure could harm Ryan Reynolds, the counter-argument is clear that relevance to the case overrides non-party considerations when the witness has first-hand knowledge that is material to the claims being made. And the tension between protecting reputation and ensuring a fair legal process creates a narrative filled with suspense, because once the messages are revealed, the consequences could be wide-ranging, affecting the perception of Blake's credibility, her strategic decisions, and the public's understanding of the dispute. And the involvement of WME adds another layer of intrigue, because agency communications could shed light on the broader context of Hollywood influence, power dynamics, and how disputes between high-profile individuals are navigated behind closed doors. And as legal experts note, the high bar for sealing communications is rarely met, and attempts to do so without compelling justification often fail, meaning that the dramatic buildup we are seeing may soon reach its climax with the unsealing of messages that have been fiercely protected. And the suspense is heightened because the public has been following the saga for months, analyzing every motion filing and redaction, speculating on what is being concealed and what is about to be revealed. And the moment of disclosure could have ripple effects far beyond the immediate parties, because it sets precedent for how spousal communications, non-party witness involvement, and agency advocacy are treated in high-profile litigation. And the suspense is almost unbearable, because every detail matters, every nuance could alter the interpretation of the messages, and the timing of their release creates a dramatic anticipation that keeps viewers on edge. And the potential revelations regarding Ryan Reynolds' involvement could change the narrative surrounding Blake Lively's claims, the interactions with Justin Baldoni, and the broader Hollywood community. And the suspense is compounded by the fact that legal proceedings operate on a timeline that is deliberate and meticulous, meaning that every redaction and motion has strategic intent. And every day the audience waits adds to the buildup of tension that will finally culminate when the court rules, and the clerk unseals the documents, making public what has been carefully guarded behind legal arguments. And the intensity of this drama is only magnified by the intersection of celebrity status, legal strategy, and the very human desire to control one's narrative. And as we watch the proceedings unfold, we are reminded that the stakes in Hollywood litigation extend far beyond the courtroom, because public perception, reputation, and career trajectories are all deeply intertwined with the legal outcomes. And the suspense is irresistible, because at any moment the judge's decision could force a revelation that shifts the entire dynamic of the case, exposing communications between Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, WME, and potentially others that have been kept secret for months. And the implications are enormous, because once revealed, these messages will become part of the public record, creating a permanent footprint that will be analyzed, scrutinized, and debated in the media and among fans and legal experts alike. And the anticipation is almost cinematic, because the narrative combines legal strategy, suspense, behind-the-scenes Hollywood drama, and the very real human emotions involved in disputes between high-profile individuals. And every day that passes without a resolution only increases the tension and the public's fascination with what secrets these messages may hold. And the drama is set to reach a peak when the court issues its ruling, because the unsealing could reveal previously hidden conversations that clarify Blake Lively's intentions, Ryan Reynolds' involvement, and the broader scope of agency influence. And the suspense is electrifying, because it is impossible to predict exactly what will be revealed, only that the release will have dramatic consequences for the parties involved, the public perception, and the understanding of Hollywood legal disputes in general. And the moment of disclosure promises to be a watershed moment in celebrity litigation, because the previously sealed communications are not just peripheral details. They are central to the claims being made, the defenses being mounted, and the narrative that has been constructed over months of legal maneuvering. And the suspense is relentless, because as the legal clock ticks down, the public waits in anticipation for the moment when the court will allow access to these messages and the dramatic revelations that will inevitably follow. And this is the heart of the suspense surrounding the Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds legal saga, the unsealing of communications that could reshape the narrative, the stakes, the reputations, and the public's understanding of what has transpired, all coming to a head in a moment of unavoidable dramatic tension. The tension surrounding Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni has reached an entirely new level, as the legal battle now centers on the unsealing of text messages and communications involving Ryan Reynolds, whose involvement as a critical witness is impossible to ignore. And the suspense is almost unbearable, because these messages are believed to contain first-hand evidence of Blake's emotional state, her interactions with Baldoni, and the role that Hollywood agencies like WME may have played behind the scenes. And the implications are enormous, because if the court denies the motion to seal, the public will gain unprecedented access to communications that have been closely guarded for months. And this could potentially reshape the narrative surrounding the entire lawsuit. And as legal experts have pointed out, the concept of marital privilege is central to understanding why Blake Lively is attempting to keep these messages sealed. But the law is clear that asserting privilege selectively is highly risky, and if Blake uses any part of these communications to support her claims, she effectively waives the privilege, making the content discoverable. And the suspense is intensified, because the redactions currently in place only add to speculation about what is being hidden and why certain communications are considered too sensitive to release. And as Ron Zambrano explained, Ryan Reynolds may not be a named party in the lawsuit, but his direct knowledge of the production disputes, the objections raised during filming, and the meetings he attended with Blake make him a material witness whose communications are highly relevant to evaluating the claims being made. And the court must weigh whether his texts and any related messages fall under privilege or are essential for discovery. And the stakes could not be higher, because once these communications are unsealed, the impact on public perception, Blake Lively's credibility, and the legal strategy of both sides could be profound. And the suspense builds, because the motions to seal have failed to meet the very high threshold required by law, meaning the judge is likely to rule against Blake's attempt to block disclosure. And every passing day increases the anticipation that the public will soon see messages that may reveal intimate details about interactions on set, the planning of the film, the involvement of agencies, and the emotional distress that Blake alleges. And this is where the drama becomes almost cinematic, because the legal process intersects with Hollywood intrigue, and the release of these communications is poised to captivate public attention because they provide a rare glimpse into the private communications of A-list celebrities navigating a high-stakes legal dispute. And the suspense is compounded by the fact that third-party communications involving WME may also be revealed, and these could provide context or evidence regarding the extent of advocacy or influence applied to the case. And the tension is heightened because while Blake's legal team argues that disclosure could harm Ryan Reynolds, the legal principle is clear, that non-party status does not automatically confer protection when the communications are relevant to material issues in the case. And the dramatic stakes are further amplified because the public has been following this saga for months, analyzing every redaction and motion, filing, and speculating about the content of the sealed communications. And now the moment of revelation is approaching, where the judge's decision will determine whether the suspense is resolved or heightened even further. And the potential disclosures could have ramifications not just for the parties involved, but for broader questions of how marital privilege, non-party involvement, and agency communications are treated in high-profile litigation. And the anticipation is almost unbearable, because once the court clerk unseals the documents, there will be no way to retract the content, and the messages will become part of the permanent public record, creating a ripple effect that will be analyzed by legal experts, journalists, and fans alike for months to come. And the suspense is further intensified by the fact that the legal filings reference multiple communications that have been redacted, sparking curiosity about what is being hidden and what could be revealed when the sealing is lifted. And every piece of information contained in these messages has the potential to alter the perception of Blake Lively's claims, the role of Ryan Reynolds, and the broader Hollywood environment in which these disputes unfolded. And the drama continues to escalate because the motions to seal demonstrate a clear attempt to manage optics and protect reputations while leveraging communications that are integral to the legal claims. And the court must navigate these competing interests in a way that preserves fairness, transparency, and adherence to legal standards. And the suspense is almost tangible because once the ruling is made, the consequences will ripple across the entertainment industry, highlighting the challenges celebrities face when their private communications intersect with public legal disputes. And the drama intensifies because the messages may contain contemporaneous evidence of Blake's emotional state, discussions with Ryan Reynolds about incidents on set, and communications that involve agency advocacy, all of which are highly relevant to the underlying claims and defenses. And the tension is heightened by the fact that legal precedent strongly favors public access to filings, and the threshold for sealing documents is extremely high, meaning that unless Blake can demonstrate compelling justification, the judge is likely to order disclosure. And the suspense continues to build because every day brings the audience closer to the moment when these previously concealed communications will finally be available for review and analysis. And the implications are enormous because they could reveal details about Blake's strategy, her interactions with Ryan Reynolds, the influence of agencies, and the broader dynamics of Hollywood litigation. And the drama is further intensified because the public has been eagerly awaiting insight into these high-profile communications, speculating about what they contain. And the stakes have never been higher because once the texts are released, the narrative could shift dramatically, affecting public perception of credibility, legal strategy, and the interactions between all parties involved. And the suspense is compounded by the fact that the motions reference third-party communications that may shed light on agency influence and advocacy, creating a multi-layered narrative that adds to the tension and anticipation because every communication could reveal something previously unknown or misunderstood. And the court's ruling on the motion to seal is pivotal because it will determine whether the suspense is resolved or whether further legal maneuvering is required to manage the fallout. And the dramatic tension is almost cinematic because the interplay between celebrity image, legal privilege, and the public's right to know creates a narrative filled with intrigue, suspense, and high stakes. And the moment of disclosure promises to be explosive because the public will finally gain access to communications that have been carefully protected, sparking widespread analysis, discussion, and speculation. And the suspense is relentless because once unsealed, the messages may contain revelations about emotional distress claims, interactions with Baldoni agency involvement, and behind-the-scenes strategy, all of which are central to understanding the lawsuit and the broader implications for Hollywood legal disputes. And every passing day without resolution increases the tension, because the court's decision is expected to provide clarity on whether Blake Lively's attempt to shield communications will succeed or fail, and the dramatic buildup is nearly unbearable, because the potential for revealing previously unseen communications with Ryan Reynolds, WME, and others means that the stakes could not be higher for credibility, public perception, and legal precedent. And as the audience waits for the judge's ruling, the anticipation continues to mount, because the unsealing of these documents promises to be a watershed moment in the saga, offering unprecedented insight into celebrity legal strategy and the high-stakes world of Hollywood litigation. And the suspense is almost tangible as the public prepares for the moment when these messages will finally be accessible, creating a turning point in the narrative with consequences that will resonate far beyond the immediate parties. And the drama is far from over, because the unfolding events will continue to captivate attention and shape discussions about legal privilege, non-party involvement, and agency influence in celebrity cases. And the suspense is electrifying, because every redaction, every motion filing, and every argument presented in court now contributes to an intricate narrative filled with tension, anticipation, and the promise of dramatic revelations that could change everything. The Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni, Ryan Reynolds saga has reached a critical juncture, and the drama is far from over, because the motion to seal critical communications is poised to be decided, and the public waits with bated breath for revelations that could redefine the narrative surrounding this high-profile legal dispute. And the implications are enormous, because these messages may contain first-hand evidence of production disputes, interactions with Justin Baldoni, emotional distress claims, and communications involving agencies like WME, whose advocacy and influence have been closely scrutinized. And as legal experts emphasize, the tension between marital privilege, non-party witness status, and public transparency is at the heart of this case. And the suspense is almost cinematic, because every filing, motion, and redaction adds layers of intrigue, speculation, and anticipation. And once the court rules, the unsealing of these communications will create a watershed moment, providing unprecedented insight into behind-the-scenes strategy, personal interactions, and the emotional dynamics that have fueled this lawsuit. And the stakes are far-reaching, because the disclosure of these messages could impact reputations, credibility, and public perception of all parties involved, while also setting legal precedent for how privileged communications and agency involvement are treated in high-profile litigation. And the tension is heightened by the fact that Blake Lively's selective assertion of privilege could be challenged once the communications are used in court, potentially opening the door for full disclosure. And the public anticipation continues to build, because every day brings the audience closer to the moment when these previously concealed messages will finally be accessible. And the drama is compelling, because it combines legal strategy, celebrity intrigue, and human emotion into a narrative that captivates attention and sparks debate. And when the unsealing occurs, it will not only illuminate the inner workings of this legal battle, but also offer a rare glimpse into the complex interplay of personal relationships, professional influence, and legal maneuvering in Hollywood, creating a climax that is as suspenseful as it is revealing. And as the court prepares to act, the audience waits, knowing that the revelations to come could reshape the entire story, altering public perception and the future of this high-profile dispute forever.